Hello, everyone. Today we are going to talk about Airflow CLI. First of all, I'm Burak Öztürk. I'm an Apache Airflow committer in Apache Software Foundation and senior data engineer at Molly. And without further ado, let's talk about the outline, what we are going to see today. We will first, introduction to the Airflow CTL, we will see what is the Airflow CTL and what is for Apache Airflow. We will see our security and authorization model on the Airflow CTL, how it's evolved and what is included or not in the Airflow CTL accordingly. And we will see a couple of drill down examples as well as some small section from the keynote as well. We will see authentication flow in detail and the management flow with more use cases. And then we will talk about the challenges and trade-offs of basically using and having Airflow CTL. And also I will talk about a bit of roadmap, next steps, and we will end with the summary. So let's dive in. So what is Airflow CTL? It's a command line tool that basically interact with the API to provide similar functionality with the Airflow CLI. And it's basically designed to use easily and simply interface for API operations as we are using in the Airflow CLI. And it's also the kubectl for Apache Airflow means that all the API calls will be handled with Airflow CTL. We will see how those are working. Okay, why securing the CLI is important. In the current state, the CLI is directly communicating with the database, metadata database, and it's a very powerful tool. It's basically can trigger DAGs, change states of the DAGs, and do all those things. And basically, you need an JDBC connection in order to do it. Also, one of the other aspects is having the RBAC and authentication layer on the CLI for basically enhancing our auditing, enhancing our traceability, as well as securing the CLI. From multiple great presenters in the keynote that basically risk of having direct database connection from other components. So of course, there's some side effects on the CLI as well, and we can start with, like, for example, bypassing the policies and RBAC. The Airflow CTL basically will provide this. And in the current structure, basically, we are directly calling the database and bypassing any audit trail as well. So no audit trail if you run the CLI. And of course, it can also be fragile, the schemas and the versions related to database changes. So let's say a database in different version, but you are using another version in your local as an Airflow CLI. And if some basically things go wrong and your metadata database can be fragile. Also reducing the blast radius. What it's mean is basically, let's say your JDBC connection across all the CLI users of the Airflow, and it's basically allowing possibility of leaking the JDBC connection rather than a short-lived token. And also allowing, of course, we saw multiple examples like operational mistakes. Let's say you just ran Airflow DB reset while you are trying to do some kind of user operations or even admin operations, but not directly with the database operations. In the current structure, it's, as we can see, the Airflow CLI needs an Airflow CFG with the JDBC URL to communicate with the Airflow CLI. And we are going to see how this will evolve into Airflow CTL. So what we aimed as a primary goals, we basically for all of the components enforce a centralized security, including the CLI, and reducing the attack surface via going over the API and losing all the direct database accesses, which we also did for the Airflow CTL for CLI usage, and single source of truth for communicating with the database rather than going through and executing queries. And we have also better automation path now, because calling the API will be safer than just executing other CLI commands. So this is, as I think you also saw in the keynote, I just wanted to highlight the part that all the components are, as you can see in the version 3 and later, it's decoupled from the direct database access. And we come up with some design principle for Airflow CTL according to security, as well as according to how we are going to split with the Airflow CLI. Is the Airflow CLI still will be there? I can say it will be there, but we will see how it will be there soon. We basically started with defining the local and the remote commands, meaning that there are some commands that is not possible to do with the API. For example, it's still possible, but not secure enough to, for example, you don't want to run an API server via API itself. So those parts will be counted as local, and all the remote part are just the commands that we can basically do with the API calls and with the endpoints. And of course, it's also fail-safe, means that there's no, let's say, possibility of silently writing something to DB. It's all basically tracked, audited, as well as behind the RBAC. It is version aware and also secure by design. And we will deep dive into security part in a bit. So in the evolution, the important part to understand what is remote command and what is local command. The remote command is basically any command that you could do with the API, even though you have like multiple API calls from different endpoints. But for the local commands, it's basically the commands that cannot be used over the API. Let's say, for example, Airflow DB commands, Airflow standalone, Airflow API server, Airflow that processor, any command that is running a process with a daemon or basically administrative task that needs direct database access, and it will be also a bit more complex. For example, Airflow DB init, that you want to just initialize a database in a brand new environment, but you don't want to go through all the API and etc., since you are the administrator and deploying the environment at that time. So let's don't forget this split. I will talk about a bit more in the next slides. Okay, what we have operational part. Of course, the administration part could be included in some remote commands like listing jobs. We'll give you like all the jobs like scheduler, that processor. But also there are some admin jobs that like Airflow DB reset, as I mentioned, fall into the local commands. So left-hand side will be Airflow CTL, and right-hand side will stay in the Airflow CLI. So very important note, please note that Airflow CLI will continue operational for the local commands. So Airflow CTL will not replace 100% what Airflow CLI does, and it can't. But we have good portion of commands that will be used and split from this. So this is in a way that we are splitting the deployment kind of commands from the API kind of commands. And in the new structure, the Airflow CTL is basically no-need JDBC connection. You can provide API token, retrieve from API, or you can use username or password, which is how you can basically log into UI or the API. So as all the other components, now we are also behind the API over the Airflow CTL. And let's see the overall picture. I think you also see this in the keynotes, but I just wanted to highlight that what we aimed is can be seen in this diagram, where also the CLI part joined to the other components. And it's only using API to communicate through the database. Let's talk about a bit more on the security and authorization part, because we basically spent a bit more time on this to enhance and make it enterprise-grade security. One important thing to keep in mind that no credentials are stored in any of the files, any of the state that can in the file system, that can in basically anywhere other than the keyring. We selected the keyring because it's operating system native, and it's basically secure enough to provide and store our API tokens. One more thing to keep in mind that we are persisting the URL in configuration files, but of course you cannot hide your URL in any way if you are communicating over a network. So if you sniff a network, you will see the URL anyway. So we thought that it's not a security measure we should take. And the keyring basically allows us an encrypted environment to securely store our tokens. And also Airflow CTL always using to retrieve the token whenever you call a command. So it's always in the keyring, not even in the memory until basically the command started. So what are the benefits of this? No plain text secrets, even though it's a SHA or like it's a strong private key. We are always in keyring. This basically allows safer automations. We are using API. What improved as a user experience is you can just log in and you can basically set CLI JWT tokens timeout to a certain level, and you can use your token as long as it's alive and its timeout is not happened. And also what Apache Airflow have as a good thing, we can also integrate some enterprise level SSOs and for example, like key clock provider in the newer versions. And this will be also be integrated with it is not built, but it's integrated with the Airflow CTL already. So enterprise level SSOs also working with our own CLI as well as for our UI. So what was before and what was in the Airflow CTL? So we talk about this, so I will be a bit faster on this. We have the CLI connect directly to the database, now replaced with API calls. We have basically no RBAC on the Airflow CLI, but we will enforce RBAC. Nothing went through basically direct database access. It should be always on the API. Nothing stored in the files or in the environment variables. We have the secure encrypted operating system keyrings that we are using. And of course, we have now unified security posture, meaning that even our CLI is joined to that posture. So what RBAC bring is basically applies to all the calls, as well as like how we are applying to all UI calls, to all the single API calls, and basically each request needs to be authenticated and have user identity. These are, I think, basic role-based access control things that we have in the API. I'm saying basic just to as a term, not as, of course, security basic. And we have, of course, those policies applied for Airflow CTL as well. So in summary, the security part, we have the same authentication, same RBAC and audit trail with same as the web UI, our brand new web UI. And we have credentials stored in keyring. We saw it and authorized and logged all the calls. And we can also even use like a K-clock provider integrated with the Airflow and still can use our Airflow CTL integrated with it. And again, I want to mention that you can set the JWT expiration time, the token expiration time for Airflow CTL from a separate config that we will see in deep dive examples. So let's deep dive into more fun part. Now we are seeing one of like the common commands that we saw in the left-hand side, the operational part, like for example, listing pools. We are now seeing like in the above, we have like the old CLI. I'm not saying old because still applicable, but the operation part, and we are seeing the Airflow CTL. And you can also see for these kind of small operations that can be done over API, also take a bit of time to run with Airflow CLI because it's basically loading lots of Airflow components. What we did for the Airflow CLI, we are basically releasing this separately, meaning that the packages don't require Airflow core package itself. So let's see one more example as well. This is for the variables list. I think this is applicable for like all the get list update commands. And as you can see from the API, we are also getting a bit more details, and we will be able to, and we are able to update more fields in that sense. So let's see the authentication flow. I think I touched on a bit in the keynote, but I want to also describe this in a way that what it's doing behind the scene. The RBAC layer, of course, running on the API side. What we are doing with the out login command is we are calling the token endpoints that's specifically created for Airflow CTL, and we are acquiring the token. And while acquiring, we are saving that into the keyring, and then its scope is done. We are even not keeping in the memory. Whenever you basically execute, let's say, connection list, then you will basically retrieve the token from the keyring and then execute those commands. And since the token is validated from the API side, the RBAC layer is basically enforcing some kind of like rules on the API, as we already doing, and Airflow CTL is just leveraging that. Let's take a look at more on the management side. What management means is that more on like operational things that enable teams or debugging. Let's see one example. For example, job list. I'm listing the jobs. Okay, no data found. What could it be? Incident, because I should be able to see some processes, right? So seems like our cluster was unavailable for a moment. So administrator should fix the issue, and they're fixing the issue. No worries. And after, of course, they fix the issue a few moments later. When we list them again with our Airflow CTL tool, we will be able to see our processes are running fine and the environment is up. So this basically a simple script, a simple command that basically listing the jobs, yes, but it's also allow us to debugging the environment. So let's see another use case. So my deck is not working. I'm getting variable doesn't exist error at import time. So it's simple, right? I can just create a variable, and of course Airflow CTL provide that. And I'm using variables create, and it's creating our variable using the API. And now the deck can run fine. So let's see another use case. Okay, seems like some of the decks scheduled a bit later than expected. Okay, what could it be? There could be, of course, lots of different reasons, but let's assume our administrator is digging right now, like we are digging the ground, of course, and they found the reason. Okay. The reason is like we have a bottleneck in one of our pools, and we need to scale up its slots. So with Airflow CTL, it's basically simple as just pools update, and we are updating the slots, let's say from 50 to 200, and allowing the scheduled or queued decks to be run faster. Okay, let's think about, we have security team, our company, and we have Airflow administrators. Of course, you will hear like from the security team, what is the expiration time of Airflow CLI tokens? Means Airflow CTL tokens. So this could be asked to you because it's important to have some kind of expirations, and those expirations can be set. Okay, what I'm doing, I'm basically just getting a config. We are using Airflow CTL config get, And of course, please be aware, again, the output format. I can output in any format as long as it's YAML, JSON, table, or those defined formats. Then I'm just seeing it's okay, it's 3,600 seconds. This is in seconds. Please don't forget. And what I'm doing, I'm just sending a message after a simple Airflow CTL call, and I'm sending to security team, and okay, that's done. Let's move on. Okay, let's say our Airflow was down for 2 hours due to some ISP outage, not directly related to us, but related to our ISP. And I started a backfill on a critical ingestion DAG that we have missed in that period. And apparently the catch-up was false. Okay, let's check our backfill. Okay, it's easy as like Airflow backfill list, similar to what we are doing with the Airflow CLI, of course, going through the API. And listing the backfill job, okay, the completed as is none, so it seems still running. Let's check after the meeting. So, of course, we are going into meeting, and we can list the backfill later again. Maybe another one, like I just want to run a DAG, or I just ask someone to run a DAG because in a meeting, I have some other things, I'm in an incident. Okay, what I'm doing is just using Airflow CTL DAG run trigger, similar to what we are doing with Airflow CLI, but of course, going to a DAG run endpoint and triggering our DAG. Okay, I ran it, that's it. And of course, you can check the DAG run details with DAG run list, DAG run get, and you can, of course, include filters as long as how our API provide them. So any filter, we are also working on improving filters, so those will be reflected to Airflow CTL as well as a next step. So let's say some of our teammates or someone from the other team just ask a provider version. You have a couple of approach at just you can see the provider version, right? You can go into the container, check it. You can go into UI if it's enabled to see the configuration. You can get into pod and basically cat the CFG file, or use Airflow CLI to direct database access. But you can also use Airflow CTL and use Airflow CTL providers list. And you can just basically check or even grab a certain provider with its version, with its package name, and I can say it's 615, sorry. Okay, and to the next one. Okay, I just want to export the variables from the staging environment, and I will import a new staging environment. Let's say we are doing a migration. And of course, I can export variables from Airflow CLI, right? I can do with the Airflow CTL as well. So pretty similar command line, Airflow CTL variables export, and pretty similar for the import as well. We have import and the JSON file, and then our basically variables are imported successfully. So I will show you a couple of more examples without use cases. Like I just wanted to show you more examples to get an idea of what you can do and how powerful Airflow CTL is. So we can do connection, any kind of connection operations. Of course, we can do also any kind of pulse operations. Those are not only limited to Airflow CTL. You can, of course, do on the web UI from the API, but it's also available in the CTL as well. Of course, the variables, we saw a couple of examples, but the variables, you can basically do the same operations, pretty much the same operations, or some of them have additional according to API and how we are implementing in the Airflow CTL. So more examples, just to see the power. I'm basically listing the assets. We have also assets operations. I can do more things with the assets, like create events. For example, you missed a one event and you want to create an event for that asset. You can do it with one command, similar to Airflow CLI, but of course with RBAC and with audit. Okay, we saw a couple of examples. Let's talk about a bit of the challenges and the trade-offs. One of the challenges is like backward compatibility. We try to make it as much as similar to the Airflow CLI, even the command names, even the output formats and output itself even though we have some less or some more things to manipulate in the Airflow CTL over CLI. But what we did is basically a bit of small issue with you need to basically add out, you need to basically retest your automation, and basically you need to map correct parameters accordingly. Most of them is the same, but let's say one of them is mapped differently in the API through other than the Airflow CLI, then you need to also map them accordingly. One of the things is completeness of the API coverage. The API itself implement new endpoints, new features really fast, and some of the API endpoints may be not available in the first release of Airflow CTL, but we will basically try to one-to-one parity, as well as we will try to fill those gaps. This is one of the trade-off at the moment, that if you are using all those API endpoints in your automation and you want to use Airflow CTL, it will be there soon. And the complexity of the design, of course, we spent a bit more time on the design of the security part, as well as the communication part, along with all the other components while they are moving to the new structure. But basically, we come up with human-friendly approach and fine-grained security. Okay, let's talk about the roadmap and next steps. We will have live log streaming. You will be able to basically see the logs, just like kubectl, yes. And worker management. Let's say you want to inspect a worker. Let's say you have an edge worker running in the other side of the world. You will be able to basically inspect and manage them, even the regular workers, of course. And of course, we will try to provide some insights, more insights. We will have hopefully remote debugging. Let's say you will securely attach the task in inspect, or this will be ideal for the developers. Let's say, you are running tag from the UI. This will be also available to debugging to see the logs, etc., from the Airflow CTL. And we will have one-to-one parity with the API and possibly automated way without doing any additional implementation on the Airflow CTL side. And we have also long-term plan. Please keep in mind that only the removed part, the left-hand side, Airflow CTL part, will be removed and deprecated from the Airflow CLI after certain version. It will be a long-term, so you don't need to expect tomorrow or next month Airflow CLI have less features. No, we will do step by step and without any disruption. So further ado, I want to just quickly summarize security isn't optional for us. And after version 3, we have fine-grained security in Airflow CLI 2. You can just use the Airflow CTL, which is the feature of Airflow CLI. We are using keyring, which is convenient and following the compliance. And also Airflow CLI, of course, evolving more secure and observable control plane. And thank you for listening.